That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, my dudes, we are going to be talking about, in my opinion, the most overrated wide receiver in all of Dynasty Fantasy Football. I mean, I really don't understand it, and I really want your opinion because, I mean, I don't see what I'm missing here. And it's not just Dynasty Leaguers that are actually valuing this wide receiver way too high, in my opinion. I mean, I actually think that so many different people in the fantasy community are as well, because if you go to the high-stake redraft leagues where I know that, I mean, I'm not necessarily smarter than those high-stakes players, and I am completely willing to admit that, and that's why I'm asking you, what am I missing? Because I'm going to break down exactly why I think that Michael Pittman is so overrated in Dynasty and in really all fantasy formats, but I really want to focus in on Dynasty for this video. And at the end of the video, I'm going to talk about some receivers that I actually prefer over Michael Pittman that come at a way cheaper price. So make sure you stick it until the end. And yeah, that's all I got for you, my dudes. Please, if you like Michael Pittman, tell me why in the comment section below. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already for whatever reason. We are going to pass 7,000 subscribers this month. I promise you that. And yeah, that's it. Let's bring up Michael Pittman here. And the first thing I want to do is look at where he just went in our most recent Flock Patreon startup draft, where I know that in these Flock Patreon startups, you're going to see players valued a little differently based on the fact that everybody that joins those leagues are a part of our Patreon community. So a lot of the times they're hearing the same discourse, they're having the same discussions. So Michael Pittman actually falls a little bit further in this draft than he would in a regular Dynasty league, but still it's at a price that I don't understand. He goes at the 903. If you pull up this draft board, which I'll put it on the screen for y'all, I mean, he goes directly ahead of Curtis Samuel, Deebo Samuel, Tom Brady in a super flex format, Terrace Marshall, Michael Gallup. Like, oh my gosh, I can never imagine drafting Michael Pittman over Michael Gallup in fantasy. He goes before Mac Jones. He goes before Hollywood Brown, Sam Darnold. In my opinion, this is a horrendous pick. I mean, if you pull up this Michael Pittman profile right now, this is a wide receiver that, if y'all remember, in the 2020 draft class, a lot of people loved Michael Pittman coming out of USC. Now, a big reason people loved him is based on the fact that he was supposed to be a pro-ready NFL wide receiver. He was supposed to be someone that could step on the field day one and be ready to contribute to an NFL offense and obviously score points for you in fantasy football. Well, that ended up not happening at all, because you pull this up and this quote-unquote pro-ready wide receiver that played some of his rookie season at 23 years old. So keep in mind, guys, I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster out there dominating in the NFL at 20 years old. And you know, this is a Flock Dynasty video, so of course we have to bring up Juju Smith-Schuster. But anyway, Michael Pittman at 23 years old still wasn't able to really do anything in this offense. We pulled it up. I mean, he actually averages 7.6 fantasy points per game. He was the wide receiver 84. And a big thing is that I want to be looking at with this Indianapolis Colts offense is they had Phillip Rivers. I think we can all agree that Phillip Rivers was, at the very minimum, an average NFL starting quarterback last season. Now, I will say that I was wrong on Phillip Rivers. I thought Rivers was going to be much worse than he actually turned out to be. So congrats, Rivers. And at the same time, this situation should have been one where Michael Pittman was able to come in and he was able to, I don't want to say put up a Justin Jefferson type season, but at least be startable for you in fantasy, because he ended up being a wide receiver 8. I mean, I think that he was set up to, at the very minimum, be a wide receiver 3, given the fact that, I mean, you had Parris Campbell miss the entire season. You had T.Y. Hilton dealing with nagging injuries at the same time. So based on those two different circumstances, you'd imagine that Michael Pittman, supposedly an NFL-ready wide receiver coming in his rookie year, would be able to see snaps, he would be able to see targets, and he would be able to produce. And that just did not end up happening. He actually had less than 5 targets a game, less than 40 receiving yards a game. And it's disgusting for a player that's going to be 24 years old going into year 2, his second year. So I don't understand why right now, in a lot of dynasty formats, Michael Pittman's being valued as a low-end wide receiver 3. I can never consider taking a Michael Pittman over a Rashad Bateman, over an Elijah Moore, over these rookies that have better profiles that at the same time have not failed at the NFL level yet. And I know that not all leagues are going to be valuing those players lower than Michael Pittman. But it's notable going over and seeing in high stakes redraft formats that Michael Pittman is being drafted in the 7th, 8th, 9th round sometimes. That's crazy because we go later on in the drafts and you see that his teammate, in my opinion, someone that is coming at a much better price point, Parris Campbell, I think that he has a similar profile in what we can expect this upcoming season than Michael Pittman. I mean, I would not be surprised if Parris Campbell was the wide receiver 1 for the Indianapolis Colts this upcoming season. Because you pull it up, I understand that Parris Campbell, I mean, he had a very disappointing rookie year where he actually only averages 5.7 points per game. So, I mean, you compare this to where Michael Pittman was at 7.6, not a massive difference. And a big thing I want to point out here with Parris Campbell is he came into his rookie season and he was a much younger wide receiver. I mean, Parris Campbell is 24 years old, just turned 24 years old like last week, compared to Michael Pittman, who's about to turn 24 years old. They're like 3 months apart. So understanding that Parris Campbell put up that rookie season production at essentially a year younger than what you had with Michael Pittman. And at the same time, this was a completely different offense. He didn't have Phillip Rivers throwing him the ball. Instead, he actually had Jacoby Brissett, which is disgusting to think about. I mean, when's the last time you heard the name Jacoby Brissett? And I think that kind of excuses away the lack of rookie season production for Parris Campbell better than it does for Michael Pittman. And yes, we didn't get to see Parris Campbell at all in year 2, besides one game where he looked very good. I mean, he scored 14 fantasy points in that game. He led the team in targets, and I thought that he was going to take over as the wide receiver 1, like we assumed he was going into year 2. And of course, he gets injured, so his dynasty value plummets, and people are not really reacting and rising him up because, I mean, this is also a player that was drafted in the 2nd round back in 2019. He's going into year 3. I think that if you look at his breakout age, if you look at what he actually did at Ohio State, and I would argue that he was a much better prospect than Michael Pittman coming into the NFL. They both failed their rookie seasons. I would argue Parris Campbell had a much worse situation his rookie year dealing with injuries and at the same time dealing with the play of Jacoby Brissett. Yet you're pulling up this Parris Campbell draft price, and keep in mind, I'm showing y'all a screenshot from a Flock Patreon Dynasty League, so you're going to see Parris Campbell go a little bit higher here than you would see in a regular format, and you're getting Parris Campbell at the end of the 13th round. You're getting him directly behind Christian Kirk, Amara St. Brown, Gabriel Davis, and we go back and we compare this to a player like Michael Pittman, who's going in the same range of a Rashad Bateman and an Elijah Moore, going ahead of Michael Gallup. And it's a night and day difference in terms of the price that you actually have to pay for a wide receiver that I think is very similar. I mean, they're almost identical in their age. They're almost identical in their rookie season production. Parris Campbell had a better prospect profile coming in, and Parris Campbell at the same time had a worse situation his rookie year. So now what's really crazy is I understand that people are wanting to value Michael Pittman as the wide receiver 1 based on the fact that he has that massive frame and based on the fact that Parris Campbell hasn't done anything for 2 years. But I don't understand the difference in value between Michael Pittman and some of these other wide receivers that were drafted in the 2022 draft class. 2020 draft class. Because we pull this up right now. And a player that has fallen drastically in dynasty value in Henry Ruggs, I would argue is more valuable, at least I would value him higher in fantasy than Michael Pittman. And this is why I'm asking y'all for your help, because we're seeing that Henry Ruggs is an 11th round selection in high stakes redraft formats, while Michael Pittman is going in the 8th round. So that's why I'm asking. I need y'all to explain this to me down in the comment section because I don't understand it at all. Because we pull this up real quick. And yes, Henry Ruggs had a very disappointing rookie year where Henry Ruggs actually averages 6.8 points per game, which, trust me, coming from someone who drafted a lot of Henry Ruggs, you hate to see 6.8 points per game. But what is the real difference there between 6.8 points per game and Michael Pittman's 7.6? And you add on the fact that Henry Ruggs played his rookie season at 21 years old compared to Michael Pittman playing his rookie season at 23 years old. And while you actually have Parris Campbell coming back to the Indianapolis Colts offense to take targets away from Michael Pittman, in the case of Las Vegas, you have the leading target receivers there in a Nelson Aguilar going over and playing for New England. You have a Tyrell Williams going over and playing for Detroit. I don't necessarily want to worry about John Brown coming over because you look at the John Brown contract, and really, I don't think that you have to assume that John Brown's going to be taking that many targets away from Henry Ruggs. So I would make the argument that Ruggs, I want him over Michael Pittman in Dynasty because these are two players that if you were looking at rookie drafts last year, Henry Ruggs was valued higher than Michael Pittman. Henry Ruggs and Michael Pittman had very similar rookie seasons. I would argue that Henry Ruggs has less competition for targets going into year 2 than Michael Pittman has going into year 2 in Indianapolis. Is the difference of Carson Wentz from Phillip Rivers that big? Because Carson Wentz was one of, if not the worst starting quarterback in the entire NFL last year. And Phillip Rivers wasn't that bad. So are we really thinking that Carson Wentz all of a sudden is going to be some massive upgrade over Phillip Rivers to a point where we should be evaluating a wide receiver that we had behind Henry Ruggs in rookie drafts last year? Everybody had Henry Ruggs higher than Michael Pittman. It was consensus. All of a sudden, they both have bad rookie years. Michael Pittman, the pro-ready wide receiver, should have had higher expectations his rookie season. Now, all of a sudden, Henry Ruggs is going after Michael Pittman, and by a considerable amount as well, because we already discussed the fact that you had Michael Pittman around Rashad Bateman, you had him around guys like Terrace Marshall, Elijah Moore, and you compare this Henry Ruggs draft price right now. I mean, Henry Ruggs, we pull up where he went in this past draft. He goes in the 11th round, the same round where you have Kadarius Toney, Mike Williams, Brandon Cooks. I mean, it's laughable the difference that you have. And honestly, let's stick it with those 2020 wide receivers. Let's go over to a guy that I hated in rookie drafts. I didn't draft him in a single one. I actually drafted Michael Pittman in more rookie drafts than I drafted Jalen Reagor. But Jalen Reagor is another perfect example of a wide receiver that he completely failed his rookie year, just like I want to argue that Michael Pittman did. But I think that Jalen Reagor actually has a better explanation for why he failed, and that Jalen Reagor was dealing with multiple injuries through the course of the season. At the same time, he was playing his rookie year at 21 years old compared to Michael Pittman at 23, like we have already discussed. And what you have in the difference between these two players is the fact that Jalen Reagor is seeing his ADP just in a free fall right now. I mean, right now, we actually had Jalen Reagor go at the 12.05 in this Dynasty startup draft, which I'm not saying is a great value. I'm just saying if I'm drafting any of these wide receivers, I'm drafting Jalen Reagor in the middle of the 12th round instead of Michael Pittman in the middle of the 8th. I mean, Jalen Reagor goes in the same round of Gabriel Davis, Jarvis Landry, McCole Hardman. I mean, he goes directly before Kenyon Drake, Taysom Hill, Melvin Gordon, Ben Roethlisberger. I love this Jalen Reagor draft price, to be completely honest, only when we're comparing it to Michael Pittman, because that's how bad of the price Michael Pittman is. I mean, Jalen Reagor averages 7.4 fantasy points per game compared to Michael Pittman's 7.6 last year. Jalen Reagor, on one hand, actually should have had a way worse rookie season than than Michael Pittman, given the fact that Reagor had 2 significant injuries his rookie season, and at the same time, he was 21 years old. So a wide receiver that was drafted in the first round was way higher than Michael Pittman in rookie drafts last year, in my opinion, has a better rookie season than Michael Pittman, and all of a sudden Michael Pittman is valued higher. So please, guys, let me know what I am missing here. Is it just based on the fact that Carson Wentz is coming over to Indianapolis? Do that many people think that Carson Wentz is going to be able to elevate this entire offense? Because if that's your opinion, if you think Wentz can be better than what Phillip Rivers was last year. Phillip Rivers, I would argue, was a league average quarterback. I want to say that if Carson Wentz becomes a league average quarterback based on his quarterback play the past 2 years, that would be exciting for the Indianapolis Colts. Do you really think he's going to turn into a top 10 option? Because if Carson Wentz is going to be that top end option, why aren't you just drafting Carson Wentz? Why aren't you just taking Jonathan Taylor, knowing that Jonathan Taylor, if Carson Wentz is an above average NFL quarterback, is most likely going to be a top 3 running back in fantasy? I don't understand this Michael Pittman price at all. Draft Parris Campbell, draft Henry Ruggs, draft Jalen Reagor if you want to be drafting a disappointing young wide receiver. But don't be drafting Michael Pittman because somehow his value has risen since the rookie drafts, and it's really should have fallen dramatically. Now, thank you, my dudes. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I know if you were a Michael Pittman owner, you did not, but please go down there, drop a like regardless. Leave a comment telling me why Michael Pittman is going this high in drafts because I don't understand it. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow.